I always share one thing that it stuck with me since definitely the first 6 months that we started working together. You shared with me the objective purpose of business rather than the subjective purposes of business that people
Right.
have. And I think that's a great way to start, um, and frame the conversation. But what is the objective purpose of business and why does it matter?
Well, let me make a distinction. There's subjective and objective. And of course, subjective is our feelings and ephemeral, and you can have a subjective belief, and I can, and who's to say one's right and one's wrong? So there are as many subjective reasons to be in business as there are business owners. It might be because you want to be your own boss. It might be because you lost a job and can't get one. It might be because you want to prove your high school sweetheart was wrong to dump you. It might be because you want to make money and help. It doesn't matter. It can be anything, and they're all legitimate. But the point I like to make to people is there's only one objective purpose to being in business, and it's true for every business, and it's to convert cash into more cash. I usually do this with a little diagram, but just to talk about it, people can easily understand it. The cycle of business is that it takes cash to begin a business. We all know that. And there are two ways to get it. You can borrow the money, or you can invest, you or somebody else can invest the money in exchange for ownership. But you take that cash and use it to buy assets. Assets, of course, are things that you own. They're computers, your desk, your office furniture, your truck, your equipment, your tools, maybe the shop. Technically, some of those aren't assets, but they are things that you buy with cash in order to do what you do. And you use the assets to generate sales, which, as we've talked at length before, the sales hopefully carry margins. The margins are enough to pay your overhead, and what's left over is profit. And you say, woohoo, I made a profit. Well, you're not finished if you don't convert the profit into more cash. And obviously that means somebody who doesn't pay you, or things that are tied up in accounts receivable, or maybe, but for whatever reason, you made a profit, but you didn't convert it to cash. And once you do convert it to cash, the cycle is some of the cash goes back to replenish the assets so you can keep the cycle going. Some of the cash goes back to either to pay off debt or to pay a return to the owners. That's the cycle of business. And usually when I'm talking about the cycle of business, the reason I'm talking about it is that many people pay attention. They think the purpose of business is sales. They may, if you challenge them on that, say, oh no, of course I need to make a profit. But if you ask somebody about their business, how big is it? How much did you grow? They're going to tell you sales. And that's fine, as long as it carried margins and it went down to profit. The second thing they might mention, if they're particularly candid, is the profit they made. So the first thing I ask about a business, hey, my sales doubled last year. Well, how about your profit? The answer I get most is, I don't know. And of course, that's why we're always talking about books. But if they do know, they'll mention that they got a profit. And say, well, that's well and good, but what's your cash position? And the cash position is usually a secondary thought until it becomes a crisis. But it's where the real action is, because you can make a profit, but you can't make payroll with a profit. You can't pay your bank loan down with a profit. You can't buy a new skid loader with profit. All of those things take cash. So that's that's the cycle of business, and people need to always think. I mean, there are many instances where people could sell less and make more. But
Absolutely.
that doesn't usually occur to people. They think it's got to be sales. Sales for many people is the most important part of business. They're the salesmen or the rainmakers. They're the point of the spear. I heard a talk the other day. The guy said, well, everybody's going to admit that sales are the engine pulling the train. And I'm sorry, sales are, I hate to be so cliche, but it's a chain, right? Sales are one of the links, but sales do not lead the engine or the train. You got to have a product to sell,
Yeah.
right? And you have to be able to manage your cash so that you can stay in business. And you have to have marketing so you can generate leads in order to get sales. And you have to have leadership in your company so people know where you're going and your culture doesn't blow the whole company up, as frequently happens. So sales are a real important part, but that what you're really after is cash into more cash. And by the way, there are companies that are so good at it that they create more cash, they generate more cash in a period than they do sales. And you might say, how do you do that? And of course, it's things like depreciation and amortization that allow you to do that. But that's the point: is profit is a step in the cycle, but the end of that step is more cash. And I always put the word more, then, because of profit. If you've done it right, you're going to have more cash than you started with.